Okay, good morning. Good progress so far. I actually did not live stream the finishing up of the ink work, but I did complete it yesterday. So if you want to just see the recap of the scene, we've got to deal with her breathing in that shot as she's sleeping. By the way, I don't know what happened to my webcam. It doesn't seem to be showing up at this point, and I don't want to take the time to figure out why at this moment. So she flips over. Okay, so we've got to put in the rock that falls to the ground there. Okay, and then she's keenly aware of those guys. Okay, so I did load the shot into Credo, and on my laptop it was pretty much hopeless, frankly. The idea of loading 1,000 frames into Credo on the laptop seems to be a non-starter, which is not ridiculous, but at the same time it is a little disappointing, just because even 1,000 frames really isn't that much data at all to load into memory. So for any program to be choking on it is, like I said, a little disappointing, but that's fine. The good thing with Credo is I could bring them into, let's just kind of kill all these layers and see what we've got here. So that's a group layer. So when we bring in the pencil, or not the, well, really the inked lines to Credo, this is what it looks like. If you go to 100% view, then you can see I actually was having my doubts as to whether the Blender grease pencil was going to give me a quality of ink line that I would be satisfied with, but actually this is not too bad. It's really not too bad. I may change my mind later and reserve the right to do so, but so anyway, on this machine, which is a 12-core machine, it did load up pretty quickly, and then I should probably go back to the beginning here so this doesn't look stupid, but go to frame, I believe I want to go to frame 2. Anyway, so just as a quick test, I went ahead and painted this in, and you know, it colors in and paints pretty quickly. You definitely have to go in and do brush work. Like this would be a really good example right here, where, and it's fairly quick to do. I mean, let's go to the brush tool, and then I can just hit Ctrl, grab that color, and you know, so the cleanup aspect of it isn't too bad. And if you have your fill tool settings correct, it's reasonably quick to get. If a fill is less than stellar, a lot of times by just clicking fill 2 or 3 times, it'll sort of finish up the job, because I've got it set to let's see here, this should be on the fill tool, so I have it set to grow the selection 1 pixel and feather it 1 pixel. So if I take this hair color, and let's just say I'm not happy with the color, I want to make it a little lighter. Okay, so now we do have an issue over here, but just for demonstration purposes, you can see that just by hitting fill a second time, because of that 1 pixel expansion, it did a little better job of completely filling it in. But you do have little hiccups here and there, I'm noticing. So none of which is tragic. You know, anime is all just a lot of hard work. So, well, I shouldn't say hard. It's not hard, but it is time consuming. Okay, so the good thing with Credo is I can add a layer with this setting to retain the alpha settings of the layers below it. And when that's on, I can put in highlights and shadows wherever I want, and it's impossible to go outside of the lines, which is very useful. And then in this particular shot, because it's going to be night, you would probably do something along those lines. to make it look darker and a little bluer. Taking a drink of my coffee. You can't see that today because, like I said, the webcam seems to be toast. I don't know what's going on with it. Maybe I just need to hit the on button. Maybe there's a button on it that got... What I can say for sure is that normally there's a little green light on the webcam. There ain't no little green light today. So maybe it just decided to give up the ghost. It's always unfortunate when your webcam gives up the ghost. So anyway, what I will say is that the loading of these images into Credo was nigh impossible on the on the laptop, and it was reasonable on the fast machine. I'm going to say this sequence of 1,000 frames loaded up in about less than 30 seconds, let's put it that way. Now, by contrast, opentoonz loaded it instantly. I mean, literally, load the level, go grab the image sequence, and boom, it's there. And that's impressive. And to just kind of get past Credo for now, I'm going to say that my sense is that opentoonz is going to turn out to be the better tool in the long run. It's just like I've talked about in some other videos, you just got to be really careful about saving your work. But it is cool the way it all loads in here really, really fast. Now what I'm going to do is, just to make this for demonstration purposes, because I think this is pretty important, I'm going to sort of redo what I did before. And so I need to go to Blender Render, Output, and you can see because when I save this out of Blender, I save the image name. I should probably show you this, because if you guys are interested in how this is done, this is actually kind of important. As I recall, it looks like actually, okay, it looks like Blender's actually putting 4 digits, because I just called the name Blender, that was a default, and I didn't see any reason, since I was kind of moving fast, to change it. So Blender put in 4 digits of counting for the image sequence. So it's the file name dot 4 digits dot ping. Well, coincidentally, if opentoonz finds an image sequence where the numbering it happens to be exactly 4 digits, then it sees it properly as an image sequence. So here we have 1,005 frames, and when I go ahead and load this as an image sequence, you can import it or load it, which means if you're going to import it, it's going to actually copy all the files into your opentoonz project folders, which I don't want to do. I have my files organized in such a way that that's not really necessary anyway. So, okay, so apparently I was down here at frame, whatever it was, 18 or something. But okay, so as you can see, it loaded instantly. If I hit the L key, I can go ahead and preview. And on it goes. So, having said that, what kind of advantages do we get here by doing our ink and paint, or our paint work in opentoonz? One thing is, if there's some retiming required, this is kind of nice. Like if I go back to this shot right here, if I go find the spot where this transition happens between the two shots. Okay, so it's frame 118. So if I grade, the problem we have is that when we were in Blender, I forgot to go ahead and put the breathing animation into this sequence. So we need to get that back in there. So there's 2 ways we could do that. We could reload the Blender project and put it in there, or we could just retime it and do it here in opentoonz. Now I'm going to retime it, and I'll tell you exactly why. And before I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over to another level. Okay, so now what I've done is I've taken the scene and instantly split it into 2 levels. So I'm actually going to save all right now, save this project. The reason to do that is now, since the only thing being animated is her breathing, I can do I can do the painting and get the color work all done in a single frame, and then use the plastic tool to animate the breathing, which is way faster than any other way you might do it. If I bake the animation into Blender and then render it out, now I've got 116 frames where I have to paint every frame, which is kind of stupid. I don't want to have to paint every frame if I don't have to. So that's where, you know, when I blab about workflow, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where you're just kind of working smart. One thing I need to look into in opentoonz is how do you take a sequence that's animated and loop it so that it loops forever, because that way we could have an animated cycle of maybe just a few frames. In this scene, a great example of that would probably be the spot where, and I would have to find it here. I'll just let this play for a minute and find it. But like right here, the way his hair is flopping in the wind would be a really good sequence, and the same with the tassels here. Really good sequence to animate as a loop on a separate level, and just let it, you know, loop forever. Okay, so now what we have here in opentoonz is a raster level. Okay, anytime you bring in an image sequence, it's going to be a raster level, and that means that the fill tool will not work. You cannot do fills on a raster level. It's got to be either a Toons vector level, which I basically never use for reasons I won't get into, or it's got to be a Toons raster level. The most flexible and mature, if you will, type of level to work with in opentoonz, I would say by far, is the Toons raster level. That's sort of the legacy way of working, that's sort of the tried and true. And so what you do is you just convert this frame, and all I have to do is convert one frame. So I'm just going to go to scan and clean up, and I'm going to go to clean up, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to preserve the tonality of my pencil lines. If I just do a straight cleanup here, actually, let me cancel this. If I do a straight cleanup, these lines are going to come out considerably darker. It's going to basically make them black, and in a lot of circumstances that would be okay. Okay, so now I want you to see this. This is the risk you run with opentoonz, and I'm gradually, it just died on me. Okay, so fortunately I did save my work, and most of the time, the good news about that is opentoonz seems to do a very good job of recovering from crashes. So let's see if it did so. It appears that it did. So something about doing the cleanup settings made opentoonz crash. So let's see if it happens again. Cleanup settings, and that time it worked. So, and that happens a lot with opentoonz. Basically all you have to do here is change your contrast to 0. If you turn your contrast down to 0, then the cleanup, i.e. the conversion from a raster level to a Toons raster level, seems to be pretty accurate. So again, I'm only going to convert one frame. You notice I just hit cleanup, and just to be safe, I'm really getting in the habit of saving frequently with opentoonz, because if you don't, you will regret it. Okay, so if you go to clean up any number of cells, if you will, or frames, if you don't actually have a cell selected here in the level, it appears to do nothing. opentoonz just simply doesn't do anything. So realize that you do need to have at least one frame that's selected. Okay, so it's given me this warning only because I previously cleaned it up. So I'm just going to overwrite them, and let's go apply, and I'm just going to hit cleanup. So all it's going to do actually all it should do in terms of cleanup is that one frame. So I'm going to save again. Now this is kind of interesting, and again I'm getting to know some of the nuance here of opentoonz. You'll notice that this level now has a split color. I'm pretty sure that opentoonz still thinks that this is a raster level, not a Toons raster level. Okay, and again, if you're wondering what's the difference and why is it a big deal, you can't do any coloring in a raster level. Now you could do it the hard way with a brush. You could paint in the color, but if you want to do fills, you have to have a Toons raster level. That's the bad news. The good news is there's two pieces of good news. Number one, as you can see, the conversion process was absolutely superb. This is now a Toons raster level, and it looks exactly like the art that I brought in. The difference is, if I open up my palette, okay, so now we see another opentoonz hiccup. I've seen this happen before. When I tested this earlier today, it didn't happen. So I may have to close and reload again. But what opentoonz seems to get confused with is the palettes when you do a conversion like this. If you want to, let me say this, if you wanted to avoid the whole problem, you would actually use opentoonz's tools to take image sequences, convert them to the opentoonz TLV format, which is the format of a Toons raster level, and then just drag the TLV. Well, you could drag it into a level, or you could import it, but I think you would bypass this problem by doing the converting process, or as what they call a cleanup. It seems to have this problem where we know this is a Toons raster level now, and by the way, the reason we know that is because it's green. It's changed from blue to green, but yet the palette that it's showing is a raster level palette, and I know that because that's a my paintbrush right there. So it's definitely a little confused. Let's just play with this though, and I'm gonna hit Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and then change this to kind of sort of a flesh tone kind of thing, and see if the fill tool works. I suspect it will not. Yeah, it won't work. Okay, so with that, and I know you're going, geez man, that's a major hassle having to keep killing it and restarting it. It is, but when you've dealt with software for decades, you realize that even really good software can be kind of persnickety in different ways, and you just learn to work around the strange behaviors. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so opentoonz clearly is acknowledging that this is the correct color. You can see the tint right there. But will the fill tool work? The fill tool still will not work. Okay, so I hate to say it, but when I did this earlier, it worked, and when I do it now, it doesn't work. So what do? I'm gonna say let's do load level, and would it be outputs? See, I really don't know quite what I'm looking at here. I'm not sure if it's drawings. That says Akari sleeping, but this, and let's see, that is dated 7/19, so I think this is it. I think that is actually our Toons raster level, and as you can see, it's telling me there's only one frame. So hopefully if we load this level and it recognizes it from the get-go as a TLV file, that the palette will behave properly. It doesn't seem to want to. So unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, because like I said, I did this earlier and it worked fine. I did a cleanup on this frame, and then immediately the palette looked like a Toons raster level palette, which is just blocks of color, and I was able to do fills and everything was going great. And now that, of course, now that I'm live streaming, everything doesn't work anymore. But that's opentoonz. That's what you get with opentoonz. It's flaky as can be. So Okay, so I actually can see here that maybe I've made a mistake though. It might be just the presentation of these colors that's flawed, because as you can see here, this is in freehand mode, and really to just click and have it fill, it should have been in normal mode, so maybe that's the problem. Yep, that was the problem. So my mistake, folks. And that means I can go ahead and delete this level. Sorry about that. I hate it when I make those dumb mistakes in real time, but at least we figured it out, right? So now why opentoonz is looking at this, I wonder if the fill will work here. Okay, it doesn't. So as far as opentoonz is concerned, I only converted this one first image, and the rest of them are still plain old drawings, in other words, raster images. So that's cool. At least now we know things are working as advertised. So why is this a good thing, and why take this first frame instead of having 116 images, which by the way are all identical, rendered from Blender? Instead of having those as an image sequence, I deleted all except the first one, because that means I only have to color it once. And now, by the way, I'm going to save save my work. Okay, so now I can hit the X key, and I can go ahead and program the breathing cycle into this. Now, what's going to be interesting about it, I'm going to do this probably in the wrong order. Okay, I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So I'm going to stretch this down to 116 frames so that the plastic tool is the same length as my image sequence. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and build the skeleton. So what I'm going to do is have a skeleton that's anchored here, and the most important part is going to be right there. And I think I want to select this again, and then I'm going to go ahead and just click some other nodes around here, and what that's doing effectively is protecting these regions from the impact of this bone, because I really don't want, actually this one I'm going to move back here a little bit. Okay, and this one I think I'm going to move up here. So what should happen is if I animate this bone, it's going to deform this region here, but wherever I've got these other bones, because that's their region of influence, the problem. What's going on right now is because there's no color, I probably should have painted it first, because then this whole thing would be green, not just the lines. What's actually problematic about that, I said I was probably doing it in the wrong order, and I think I am, because if this was painted, what's going to happen is the outlines are going to animate, but if I go back and paint them later it will not affect the painted lines, and everything's going to be a little screwy. But let's just see. I mean, at some point we sort of just have to figure out our workflow. Okay, Ctrl Z. Okay, so we have the same problem, and I see now what the problem is. Anywhere that we're going to protect has to be over the mesh itself. It can't be over the blank areas. So yeah, no big deal. So I'll bet you this will work. Okay, that's interesting. And we can see again what the problem is. So we know that we're going to be able to animate the breathing here. That's not going to be a problem, but without a doubt we need to go ahead and just delete this level, because it's essential that your frame be painted before you go ahead and deal with the plastic tool. So no big deal. We want to do the right things in the right order. So once again, just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and save my project. Okay. Now, drink of my coffee. Okay, so now getting back to the Toons raster level. What's good and what's bad about the Toons raster level? Well, first of all, if I go to my brush tool, in my opinion, what do we got here? I guess it's shift spacebar is the zoom tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some erasing here. There's some cleanup that needs to be done, and this is actually one of the things about anime that is, to me, is a lot of fun, is actually the detail work, this kind of stuff. Actually, I thought I would hate this, but I don't. It's really kind of fun, especially if you've got a really strong sense of how this is going to turn out, you know, what it's going to look like and stuff, you know. It's okay. So we've got a little spot here, so I'm going to switch to my my brush, and as you can see, I've got a little bit of smoothing on it, and I turned the hardness down all the way, and the size range is only 1 through 3, so it should, and I need to switch to my outline color for sure. Okay, and that's interesting. The only thing I can relate that to would be maybe this weirdness with the palette, because as you can see the paintbrush doesn't work. This is definitely black. Just make sure there's nothing strange on it. Yeah, okay, settings. That's weird that it's got auto paint for lines. It's still showing me all the options for the My Paint brushes. So, unfortunately, I hate to have this whole session turn out to be, you know, a picture of all the things that should be cool about OpenToonz but aren't, but it appears to be turning out that way. What if is it possible to load a different palette? Let me see here. New page, new style, set key, save palette as. What's this? Maybe up here on the menu, I want to load a palette. I want to trick OpenToonz into understanding that this is not a raster level; it's a Toons raster level. I'm gonna grab another possibility here, because it won't hurt to do so, which is I'm gonna go ahead and convert this as well. So let's take a chance and see if maybe the fact that this is split, part of it's been converted and part of it hasn't been converted. So we're going to convert the other 1,000 frames and just see what happens. If it doesn't work, then we'll pull the raster level back in, and hey, good. Hope I say that right. I'm using OpenToonz today. I brought the animation was completed in Blender, so here's the project, and I'll just scan through it really fast, so you can see the different shots, and right there we've got to stick in the animation of the rock that he basically knocked a rock off the little edge of the building. It sort of broke, and so that falls to the ground and makes a noise which disturbs her, and then she rolls over and back to sleep. He's worried, he's upset, they're climbing the wall, but what they don't realize is that she knows they're there. So that's what's going out of Blender. So at this point it's time to paint it, and so I'm bringing it into OpenToonz for that. I did some experiments with Credo that were a little bit underwhelming. So anyway, we're going to try this. First we're going to try the cleanup process and hope it doesn't explode. So we're going to clean up all selected drawings, overwriting those previously cleaned up. Now right now I've only got one selected, so I'm not sure. Cleanup in progress. He has 0 out of 1, so let's cancel out of that. So clearly what has to happen is we got to go down here to frame 1000. It's actually 1011 if I'm not mistaken. Okay, 1005. Alright, let's hit cleanup, and we're going to convert all of these to Toons raster. Do you want to clean up this frame? You can view it, kind of see what's going on, what it's going to look like after it's cleaned up. So I'm going to just go for it. Let's clean up all. And that's going to take a little time. Yeah, I mean, you know, several frames a second, but unfortunately it is going to be a 800 plus frames, but we can't do any filling unless we convert them to Toons raster levels. So what I was kind of getting at earlier is that one thing that was left out before this was rendered is the animation of her breathing. So I'm in the wrong layout here. So if I go to Akari, grab this, and I'm just going to go somewhere in the middle here. Let me just time out this. And it's actually not too bad. Really what I think I want to have happen is from about here to here, let's see, is we want to turn on, proportional editing. I hit the O key, but I also hit something else at the same time. So Go key. Let's just expand that like so. And let's go a little bit. And actually, I'm going to expand this a little bit more so it does affect her whole body slightly. Okay, and then I'm just going to go Ctrl Shift E. Alright, so now, there you go. Okay, so now that I've got that frame, I could take this frame that's at the very beginning of it. What I'm going to do is, this is where she's breathed in. I want a little bit of a pause at the beginning of that. So now I'm going to take this, drag it over to here. So I'm just reversing it, right? So I'm not going to explain that. I assume you guys are smart enough to figure out what I just did. Okay. Okay. So that's that. Now, applying roughly the same pace. I'm going to do this, duplicate this, should be one frame. Actually, strike that. I want to go ahead and have a slight pause at the bottom of the breath. So, okay, so now I can save this because I have brought this up to date and the breathing is baked in. Okay, and opentoonz might be done with my conversions. What I was going to do is, I was going to do the breathing in opentoonz. You said it correctly. I picked the last name of the main character from the film. Okay, cool, man. Good. Anyway, so yeah, I was going to do the animation of the breathing in opentoonz, because why do I want to bake animation into many frames of Blender, and then I have to paint every single frame, which is kind of stupid. So it makes more sense to... But I'm going to leave that here in the Blender file. So what I am planning to do... Okay, this is interesting. And okay, it looks like it worked. So now the question becomes... So to finish my explanation, what I was going to do is... Let's just take the first frame of that animation without the breathing. Go ahead and do all the paint. And then use the plastic tool to animate her abdomen, and there you go. Should work great. So, now the question becomes, will opentoonz recognize this as a Toons raster level? Now I'm going to save all. I've learned you save your work really frequently with opentoonz. Okay, as near as I can tell, opentoonz still thinks that this is a raster level. So here's what I'm going to do. I haven't really lost any time on the whole coloring thing since I only colored one frame. So I'm going to actually start a new scene, and I'm just basically figuring out that this is what the workflow needs to be if you don't want to have a bunch of weird stuff going on. I think, you know, that's what I'm hoping. So I'm going to load a level, and the level I want to load is actually here. Okay, and So this is going to definitely be a plain old... we're going to try this two ways. First we'll try loading it and doing the cleanup conversion and see if it converts properly and it recognizes it as a Toons raster level. If it does, we're good to go on Paint. If it doesn't, then there's another way we can sort of convert it, not externally, but it's like a separate operation instead of cleanup, where opentoonz simply takes any image sequence and will convert it to a TLV file. So let's give this a crack. First, let's load this, and we're not gonna import it. We're gonna load it, and immediately do cleanup on it. Okay, so I'm just gonna go all the way to the bottom, grab all these guys. I'm gonna save my work right now. I called this Akari sleeping because I was kind of in a hurry and just wanted to come up with a name for it. So I'm going to overwrite that. Okay, so now we want to clean it up. I'm not even going to mess with the cleanup settings. I'm going to just go for it. And see what it did? That's what we wanted. So now it's cleaning it up, and it's already recognized it as a Toons raster level, and it gave us the Godzilla palette with every color under the sun. So that's good. That's what we wanted to have happen. So anyway, while that's converting, this is the nice thing about having two different programs that you're using. Okay, so if you're new to my live stream, you might be wondering why use Blender Grease Pencil for the pencil test and the inking. And the answer is, first of all, for the inking, I reserve the right to change my mind, and I may wind up doing inking directly in opentoonz later, or even Credo. The main caveat with Credo being you've got to work with 2 or 3 shots at a time. Like with Credo, I think at this point, from what I've seen, I would not load more than a couple hundred frames into Credo because it starts puking. You know, it starts really bogging down. Okay, so the other thing though about Blender that's really nice for this type of stuff is I don't have to hand draw all these frames and emulate the camera motion and all that. Instead, what I did was I just created a text object and parented the layers, as you can see here by this little bone here. That's parented to that text object. So that means I can draw it once and then just animate it that way. Okay, so it's just all a matter of not doing a bunch of work, extra work for no good reason, you know. So where are we at then? Well, I want to go in while opentoonz is doing that conversion and deal with, and by the way, I think I'm going to put another, I'm probably going to put another in between in there sometime. That's not critical that I do that now, but this is the key moment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this as another layer. So what do we got here? Right there, we got that. I want to make sure my layer names don't make a lot of sense. What I'm learning is at least for this way of working, what seems to be the most, I'm turning these on and off to figure out what layer this drawing is in. It's probably Ninja 2 actually. Nope. See, he's in Ninja 1 even though he's Ninja 2. So yeah, my layer naming is not very smart at this point. Why not do everything in Blender? Good. Let me tell you something. Everybody asks me that question. Okay? No, it's not that it's too much work. I'll show you right here. The reason Blender is fantastic for this type of stuff like pencil tests and all is that you can go, like for example, I could go grab this and hit the period key and rotate this and then make some modifications to it and clean it up. Obviously that, you know, you'd want to turn this way down, and but using that as a crappy example, quickly getting things keyframed and almost being able to treat everything like it's rigged. This would be a better example here. I click right there, and now I can make an adjustment to this, and then with a little bit of extra painting in here, or drawing I should say, I can save myself having to completely redraw and redraw. So Blender treats all these lines, these same lines in Credo or opentoonz would basically be a bitmap, but in Blender, for all practical purposes, they're like vectors. You know, you can go in and manipulate them this way. So that makes it a big win from a mainly from an animation standpoint. From a drawing, you know, quality of line, brushwork, all that sort of stuff, it's just okay. I mean, it's pretty much kind of like any other program, but being able to manipulate those points is quite useful. Now, from the standpoint of, to answer your question, Blender is hopeless when it comes to ink and paint, or well, when it comes to paint. Unless you want to say create a layer, like maybe I'm going to create a layer and then I'm going to grab a color here and actually I'm going to do my paint this way. Okay? You could do that. You could do that, and that's a legitimate strategy. And it's pretty much the strategy in Blender if you want to do painting here. And I may come back to that. But for the most part, I found I get better results when I do the ink in Blender and then bring it into either Credo or opentoonz and just do the painting the old-fashioned way with the fill tool. Okay? So that's the reason. But like I said, everybody asks that same question because, you know, I think most of the people who come to my channel, what they're hoping for is a somewhat miraculous story that shows the Blender grease pencil being used for everything. It's like everything's Blender, Blender, Blender. That's not how I roll. I love Blender. I've been using Blender since 1999. Okay, I got 20 years with Blender almost. It has its strength and it has its weaknesses, and the grease pencil is pretty cool for a lot of things. But it is not complete. There are a lot of things about Blender that are, especially in the 2D arena, that simply aren't up to the task. Blender 2.8 will not run on this 12-core Intel with an NVIDIA graphics card machine. This machine that has been used to edit and do special effects and all the rest on several feature films can't run Blender 2.8. It just starts to run and blows up. Now my Gen 8 Intel 8-core machine will run Blender 2.8, but it's real immature. I can't possibly trust it for real work, so I'm not at this point. I'm not going to try because, you know, I want to move forward with this project. I'm not going to wait and hope that Blender 2.8 is everything that it seems to be promised to be, because it's not going to be. It's going to be buggy. It's going to have problems, and the stuff that's been done with Blender 2.8 on the grease pencil side, for me, quite honestly, is actually not that impressive. Because when I look through the animation and see what Peppyland is doing, I can see how he's doing what he's doing, and there's a lot of pieces missing that would be important to an anime production. So that's kind of the long-winded answer of why not do everything in Blender. So I use Blender for what Blender's good for, and it's good for a lot of stuff, but I am looking at other tools for things that Blender isn't so good at. If you did painting in Blender using the UV editor with an image sequence, which you could also do, you have to paint every single frame. Whereas the way I'm working in either Credo or kind of to a lesser extent opentoonz, you can paint just the frames that, like if a frame doesn't move, like his foot doesn't move for several frames, well, I really only want to paint it once, right? So I can do that easily in Credo, and a little less easily, but easy enough, in opentoonz. And at the end of the day, if opentoonz was stable, it would probably be my go-to tool, because it really has everything you want for an anime type of production. So anyway, the cool thing here, I was going to deal with this rock that falls, but I'm going to come back to that later, because really today I wanted to sort of focus on the ink or the paint process in OpenToonz. So coming back here, now that this is a Toons raster level and everything has worked sort of as advertised, I can save all. So one cool thing is I can change the color of the outlines instantly. So if I want a little more charcoal or even give it a little bit of a tint, no problem. I can do that. So so there's that. If I want to deal with, I'm going to take color number 2, and let's say we want to do that anime style where we use it to deal with shadows. So what we do is we go to our settings and we set auto paint for lines, and that's all we have to do. Now if I go in here and let's just zoom in, baby. Okay, take my brush, which I'm going to turn the hardness. That's good, I got all the settings correct. Okay, if in OpenToonz, if I go like this, as an example, this is, I'm kind of doing this fast to just to show you. Then if I was coloring her skin this color, and let's say the shadow's that color, that line I just put in there gets erased. Now you say, well, wait a second, those colors suck. That doesn't look like flesh. No, that's true. But I could take the RGB, if I had some other flesh tone on here, I could actually take the R key and sample it. Unfortunately, it doesn't let me sample the actual palette, so, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go to back to the color settings and change the color. This is the power of the Toons raster level, is that you can change colors after the fact. So now for this shadow color, I'm just going to hit the R key, sample that color, and then darken it a little bit, right? So there you go. Now you say, well, yeah, Dave, but you got a little problem here. That's okay. I've got the correct colors selected. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the fill tool, but I'm going to go to freehand. And if I wrap a lasso around that, it's going to fill it in perfectly. So as you can see, the other thing that OpenToonz will do for you that is absolutely cool is when you're doing the fill tool, you can select a frame range. So what you do is you click or lasso at the first frame you want to fill, and then you go to the last frame you want to fill and click, and it'll interpolate where you moved your mouse or whatever. So the easiest way to understand it would be as if you did a normal fill where you just click, okay, just like that. So if I did it like this, okay, so if I wanted to fill, you'll see here I'm going to change this so that this pose is only this single frame, and then I'm going to deform it with the plastic tool. But right now what we have is a sequence of images that Blender generated. So if we go to frame 116, I'm just going to go down here, if I recall correctly, yeah, it changes poses here. Okay, at frame 118 is what it is. So watch this. This is what I was talking about with the fill tool. If I grab this flesh tone and I go frame range, click there. So if I want to deal with this as an image sequence and sort of suffer through it that way, even though it's kind of dumb to do so, go here, and now I'm going to click there, and it went ahead and filled that flesh tone through that whole range of images or frames. Now of course, because of the way I did the shadow, that didn't get preserved, but in any case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit, and it says no more undo operations available, so I sort of shot myself in the foot here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete this frame, and then I'm going to delete everything up through 118. You'll see why here in a minute. So I want to go down to 118. I believe. Let's go ahead and hit delete. Yes. Okay. So now, I keep scrolling the wrong thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. The fact that this is the second image in the sequence, it doesn't matter a bit. Okay, I'm going to take this and drag it over here. So now I have two levels, and then I'm going to extend this down to 117. Okay, so now I have a sequence that's actually just one frame repeating. I'm going to save all, save my work. I can't go any further until I color this. Okay, so let's just deal with that. Normal mode, we don't want frame range because we're actually only filling one frame. And so now I want to step back a little bit. Think about where I'm going to run into problems. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the brush tool, and let me hit N. I guess maybe I don't have the hotkey set up on this machine. Yep, there it is. N. N goes to actual pixels, which is, for fine tuning, that's kind of what you want. So I'm just going to go through here and I'm going to do some fixes to this frame. So the bad news is that I have to do fixes. The good news is I only have to do the fixes on one frame, and then I'll be able to go ahead and color it and then use the plastic tool to get that breathing effect that I was talking about and showed you in Blender. So this seems to need a little bit more range of size on my brush. That doesn't feel right to me. I'm going to press harder. I think I'm going to go up to 8. Okay, that seems to match pretty closely. I'm actually going to go up to 10 so I don't have to press quite so hard. Still not happy. Let's go to 15. See what that, oops. Okay. Okay, cool. Except I had the wrong color selected, but okay, so now the thing you got to realize is I'm going to turn the smoothing off. The smoothing's not helping me right now. It's just actually bogging down my brush a little bit. Okay, that's strange. Let's go back here and see if that. I don't know. The sensitivity curve on the tablet doesn't seem to be exactly stellar, but I'm just going to do the detail work here and suffer through it. So the Toons raster levels are, in my opinion, definitely pretty useful, pretty robust. I love the fact that you can change the colors after the fact, because in this case what you want to do is, I could color this using whatever would be her sort of natural local color, assuming white light, daytime, yada yada yada. Save the palette and then go in and modify it for nighttime, which we will have to do in this case. And like I said, change the colors after the fact. The only way you could really do that in a program like Credo would be to take the layer that has your paint in it, and I do definitely put my paint in a separate layer than my ink when I'm using it, when I'm doing this sort of thing in Credo. And then just add a filter, like a hue saturation value filter or something like that, to the layer and tint it that way. But you could do that in opentoonz as well by yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, go eat your food, man. That's cool. So yeah, if I was doing it in Credo, I would duplicate the color, the paint layer, and then tint the duplicate and just sort of protect myself that way. Okay, so for the most part, we don't really need to do exhaust. Oops, I'm painting when I'm supposed to be erasing. So what I was going to say is that I don't have to do exhaustive cleanup. OpenToonz will do a very good job of filling an area, even if there's some sketchy edges to it. It tends to be pretty darn good at doing filling. Oops. But obviously you can't have any open. See, that's one thing with OpenToonz that bugs me. Every once in a while the brush sort of forgets that it's supposed to be responding to tablet pressure. So, and you know, I could start filling it and then sort of discover as I go where the problems are, like open spots that can't, like right there, that's obviously going to be a problem. Well, actually it would be a problem if this back here wasn't part of the pillow, but it actually is. So I think I'm pretty close to being on solid footing here with this frame. Okay, so that looks pretty good. File. I'm always going to save with Credo. I mean OpenToonz. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just start doing some filling work and see if... Actually, no, I'm not. Strike that. What I'm going to do is shadows. Okay, so this would actually be easier in Credo, because in Credo I could just paint the shadows in a layer, and there is a way to do that in OpenToonz as well. By using the Schematic View. So I'm being pretty bold here, obviously, with my shadow colors. And I may change my mind. I may decide this is too bold. But again, we're kind of in a mode right now of testing some things in OpenToonz, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and how things work. So if this shot winds up being, or this particular scene as realized here winds up being something of a throwaway, I frankly don't much care. I just want to see this through and see how it goes, and then we will adjust accordingly. Alright, so actually that, I wonder if I go, let's turn pressure off. Let's put the max at 5. Let's see what happens if we put the max at 5. Okay, that's actually better, honestly. Okay, so with that I should be able to fill that and that. Okay, I can see a problem right there. And let's see, up there it is. I'll bet you that did the trick. Let's find out. Yep. Okay. So there's her face, and actually this is the complete reverse of what I had intended to do, but it actually looks pretty good. So you know what, I'm gonna stick with it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do her brows and stuff a little different way, because there's no way OpenToonz is not going to get the paint into those corners perfectly unless I tell it how to, and that's what the freehand mode is for. I'll show you this. If I go normal mode, I'm pretty sure this, yeah, see, it's gonna leave this gap. So this freehand mode gives you a little more control. And obviously we have a little bit of an issue there with the shadow that bled over. I don't actually know how I'm going to fix that, so I'm just going to give this a crack. Okay. Use the brush tool to maybe bring that back. Yeah, there's definitely a few things here about opentoonz that I'm sort of learning. Yeah, I think I have to erase that, and look, then the orange came through. So the question becomes, is that going to be acceptable or not? And my sense is that no, it is not. It's a little too messy. So I'm going to actually hit undo a bunch of times and see if it'll let me. Okay. Okay, I see. It's because of the red. You know what would actually be super cool is if there was a way to protect an area from erasure. I'm just going to draw that line right there. And what if we did it that way? Let me see what happens. Yeah, that worked. Okay. Ooh. Okay, fill tool in normal mode. Okay, yeah, that's not really what I wanted to have happen. Let me check something here real quick. Yeah, that's not going to work. So I'm learning a little bit here about auto paint for lines. It definitely can be a little problematic, but that's why I do this stuff, is I want to figure out what works, what doesn't, how it works. Hey Oscar. So now if I do a standard fill, then I can switch to freehand mode and grab that, and opentoonz does a great job of getting it. Now this is probably going to screw up the auto paint for lines. Yeah, it did right there. So that's not going to be acceptable. Okay, so let's go to the brush tool, take our outline color, fix that up. Hey Oscar, I did go ahead and finish this up yesterday, so this is what we have coming out of out of Blender. And then for painting purposes, I'm bringing it into opentoonz. I did an experiment on my laptop with Credo to see if it could be done that way. And what I found was on the laptop, it's ridiculous. The laptop cannot handle a 1,000 frame image sequence. So that's just a lesson learned. Okay, I didn't want that little glitch right there at the end. On this machine, Credo did a pretty good job of loading it up. Yep, that looks fine. And actually, see, I can fix that right there by just lassoing it. This right here is clearly a problem. And correcting problems. See, this is where opentoonz, I just haven't quite learned it well enough, what its idiosyncrasies are. I should be able to fix it in post, as they say. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab this, draw that line, and then let's assume, by the way, let's change this color. Obviously that was not the correct color for her eyebrows. The good thing about the palettes, yeah, progress, exactly. The good thing about the palettes in opentoonz is that, as I said, is that you can change the colors after the fact, which is really cool. So let's go to the fill tool. Let's see how this goes. Oh yeah, we don't want to be in freehand mode anymore. That's too dark. I guess that's the color I wanted. And then that. Okay, so again, you see this little bit of a problem with the auto paint for lines. So I have sort of I have mixed feelings about auto paint for lines at this point. I'm actually thinking that it's better to if you're going to fill an area like with a shadow or something, to actually delineate that area with the color you're going to use for the shadow, as opposed to like a color like red or blue or whatever that's set to auto paint for lines. But it is cool that you can do it. If you go to any palette entry here in opentoonz and set this in the palette to auto paint for lines, then when you do a fill in that area, that borderline will disappear. So, which is pretty cool. You know, that's kind of how you want it to behave. All right. Actually, why am I going to do that? I think that wants to be the line art color, and I don't like that. We need our shadow color right there. Okay, cool. So then this, how are we going to do this? Let's see if this treats it any differently. That kind of worked, but it still screwed this up. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see if we hit erase. I'm just going to erase these auto paint for lines. Once we get this girl colored in, then we'll be able to use the plastic tool to program her breathing pattern. So that'll be cool. So who knows? I mean, obviously, any of these red lines are going to disappear when I do the fills. Now, Akari's hair is purple. Let me step back here for a moment and think about this. Her hair is essentially purple. So I'm going to go ahead and redo some of these lines. I want to see this in my mind, he might say. Let's try something like that. Alright, let's go ahead and fill that. Sorry. Okay, and now we'll adjust the color to kind of a purplish color. It's really the ability to change the colors in post, if you will, is super valuable, because frankly, I don't know exactly what the colors are going to be, and so we need the flexibility of making adjustments downstream. That feels pretty good, and obviously it's not perfect. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go to Freehand or fill tool. Stop. Okay, yeah. So like I said, this is where I'm learning some of opentoonz idiosyncrasies. I'm not quite sure what it's looking for here. Is it going to fill it? Yeah, and it won't fill those. And it also, I believe, okay, it will let me paint over them. So that's good. That's a step in the right direction. So now, we actually, I would say, we need another color. For this shadow area down here. Let's go ahead and fill it with this. Yep. And then let's zoom in and fix the stupid stuff. Okay. And then we're gonna grab the R key to sample that color, and then just darken it a little bit. So what do you got here? Have you ever thought of using 3D models with Toon Render? Yeah, trust me, I have. I've also thought about doing just doing rotoscoping, and I actually have a bunch of YouTube videos about that, where I took a rotoscoped walk cycle and just animated over it. Yeah, fixing coloring of frames in post. Yep, that's going to come up because there's no way this is going to be perfect out of the gate. It's just not going to happen. So I expect to have some tweaks in post, if you will. Most of my editing's done in Sony Vegas. I think I've got version it's either version 12 or 13. And Vegas is a very capable editor. That's what I've used to edit all the movies on. So anyway, let's go back, take a look at this. Okay, not really happy with this area, but it needs highlight and shadow area. So let's solve this way. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay, Ctrl Z. Yeah, let's just go back. Okay, yeah, so there, it takes care of that. As I'm looking at this, it's making me want to have a little bit darker outlines as well. Okay, let's see if we can look at this. Okay. So this may be the sort of downfall of opentoonz to an extent. Let's see here. We gotta go. That's RGB. So what is this? I think it's the K tool. Let's hit K. Yeah. So I think if I select this, yes, that palette entry will be grabbed. So I'm gonna say that from what I'm seeing here, this is definitely a bit of an arduous process. Not the most fun ever. It's not super smooth and creamy. This would definitely be easier to make perfect. I say definitely. I think it would be easier to make perfect using Credo. So, but that's okay. That's okay. We're gonna just plow through this, and then we'll add the animation. Gosh. Okay, it's kind of cool that opentoonz shows me which palette colors have been used. That's definitely useful. So let's go back here. Color that. Actually, that should probably be this color. So then we're going to go through and we want to reduce the saturation of it, but then also a little darker. And then I would say, and I probably should say, I am not a I'm not a great color guy. I do not claim to be a great color guy. Color is not my forte. I don't want to say I suck at it, but yeah, pretty much. Okay, so you might be, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. If you use vectors in opentoonz, you'd see why I'm very hesitant to get on board with that statement, because opentoonz vectors are quite buggy. Enough said. You know, it's not my idea of a good time. I mean, really buggy. Seriously, you're better at illustration than colors. Yeah, I never really had any proper training in terms of paint and color and all the rest. So let's see here. Let's deal with the pillow. And again, we want to be in normal mode. Let's deal with that and that and that and that. Okay, so I've got my colors reversed, obviously. This actually should be the darker color. And we don't really want it tinted pink. But again, I really like the fact that we can make these decisions later. So I just want that to be a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit RG. I'm going to hit the R key and sample this, and then having sampled that color, just make this color a little bit lighter. That seems to work pretty well. Okay. Okay, so I see one little spot that needs to be fixed. Well, like I said, the good thing is once this is right, because it's just one frame, it should be fairly quick and easy to do the animation part of it. Okay, so what color do we want to make her? Let's see here. Okay, that color hasn't been modified, so hasn't been used. So let's just go with an orangey-ish color for the moment, since we can always change it. I don't know, what I'm thinking is sort of a deep burgundy might be good. Let's really saturate that, but make it pretty dark, and then back it off a bit. Okay, and with that, I'm thinking these areas as well. And then what I wanted for this is definitely not purple, but a really rich gold color. So something of that nature. Okay, and this. Okay, hold on. We want to see the corners there are screwed up. All right, that's where you definitely want to use the freehand mode. Let's just select those. And now we can hit the R key to grab that color and then darken that into a shadow. And then we want to go here and catch that. Okay, I think we are in good shape. As stated repeatedly, we can always go back and change these colors later, even to the point of adding a just a post-production filter in the schematic view. We could do it that way. But the important thing is that we want to be able to use the plastic tool to deal with her breathing. So I'm going to hit the X key. I'm going to create the mesh. We don't need particularly high resolution on this at all. So I'm going to take it easy on the computer. And now we're going to create the skeleton, which is going to be something like this. This is going to be the area that animates a lot. And so now what I'm going to do is, I think the way I'm going to try to do this is just to draw a chain around here to protect the areas that I don't want to have animate. Okay, so now I can stretch this down to frame 117 or whatever it is. Yeah, 117. And we'll go back to the beginning. Go into animate mode. And as usual, save, save, save. Okay. And yeah, first frame. Okay, so I don't really like the fact that I have to scroll up there like that, but okie dokie. And we already did it in Blender, so let's just take a look at what my timing was. I just don't want to bake this. I don't want to bake the breath into the animation and then have to paint every single frame. I mean, that's kind of stupid, I think. So, frame 45. So let's just copy that. Let's go to frame 45. Right here. And we do not want keep distance. Okay. Whoa, that's not going to work. Let's just see. Okay, so that creates kind of like an IK chain. So we don't really have a way to... Okay. Well, the point here is that this is going to be a little difficult to control. I think if I go Control C, I believe I can cut and paste this to here. Yes. I believe so. Yes. That seems to be static. which means I can go to frame 90-ish. It's somewhere in here. And you can see the plastic tool is quite powerful. It's the freehand style rendering. But my personal sense is that, I keep learning this over and over and over, is that everything in animation that you think is going to make things faster doesn't. It always winds up being not the win you were hoping for. So what is going on here? I see what's going on here. Okay. Okay, that's a little problem. Oh, I see. A little problematic. Let's hit the L key and see what happens. Okay, that looks like she's got a tumor. Looks like she's got a tumor on her back, and that's what's breathing. Okay, so that's not acceptable. That's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to build skeleton mode, and I'm going to keep that skeleton. I'm going to go ahead and add a new skeleton. Alright, and what we'll do is I'm just going to try to make this a little different. Sometimes you have to give it a couple tries, so that's okay. Let's go to animate, and let me see. Okay, so it kept the same animation but applies it to the other skeleton. That's interesting. And that looks better. Looks a lot better. I did not know that was going to happen, folks. So the only problem we have is down here. So let's stop the L key. Okay, because it's obviously it's stretched her whole body. So hopefully, yeah. See, now I've got to make those other keys disappear. So I would say the best strategy right now would be to delete that and just start over on the plastic tool. For art's sake, I'll do a 2D animation similar to what I did when I was in college when I took an animation class. Yeah. Right. You know, do you want to spend your time rigging or do you want to spend your time drawing? Both are okay. And in my experience, the time, you know, theoretically, if you spend the time rigging, everything downstream is going to go faster. What I'm finding in practice is that's usually not the case, because every shot's different. There's always an exception. Every rule has an exception, and the exception always comes up in the first 5 minutes, you know. And so for that reason, what I find is the fastest thing is just redraw it. Draw another frame is faster than anything else you can do. So, and plus, we're really going after the aesthetic of anime here anyway. I mean, that's the whole point of this project, is to create an anime. So for that reason, I'm favoring a more traditional approach, let's say. Okay, so let's build the skeleton. So this time I'm gonna do it like this. Okay, and I think that'll be okay. And then I'm gonna grab this. And again, all we're trying to do here is protect certain areas that we don't want to have move. Okay, and then all we can do is just check and see if it worked. My thinking is, let's make a slight adjustment here. Okay, yeah, I think this will work. I really like the plastic tool. I mean, it's definitely very useful. So I think we were gonna, let's just kind of get this blocked in. Since I'm pretty sure this is gonna work, I'm gonna go ahead and save early, save often, as I like to say. So yeah, I'm with you. CG has its place. I'm just totally leaning more in the direction of drawings at this point, more than rigging, because really that's what it is. And because if you wanted to do a rigging approach, use Anime Studio. I mean, Anime Studio is cheap, cheap, cheap. You can get it for $50, and for rigging-based 2D animation, it's quite good, and the inking is pretty good. There's a lot of things to recommend Anime Studio. So why am I not using Anime Studio? Because there's some things about Anime Studio that I don't like as well, and I'll leave it at that right now because I just don't really want to talk a bunch about Anime Studio. But it's a good program, especially for a beginner, somebody who's just getting into animation. Okay, let's see if this basically moves properly. Oh, that looks pretty good, except it's too extreme. So I'm going to calm this down a little bit. Calm it down. You know, I should have made these separate bones from the root, because I'm having to constantly compensate. You know, I move one bone, but it moves all the ones downstream. So that was just dumb on my part, but let's just see what happens. I may build the skeleton yet a third time. Yeah, that's horrible. That's worthless. Look, I need to say, yeah, you should use whatever tool works for you, man. Definitely. Okay, so I'm literally going to do this one more time. As I said, we're learning as we go. X key, create a mesh, apply that. I want to delete the old one entirely, and we want to build a skeleton, and this time we're going to get it right. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops. Okay, let's stop. Yeah. Grab the root. Yep. And then here, this can be a chain because essentially these aren't going to be moved. Okie dokie. Let's give it a crack. Let's just go to frame 45 and see if we can make it look good. Okay, so we're going to go into animate mode. Slight adjustment there. Slight adjustment there. Very slight there. Very slight there. Okay. And because that was my first keyframe, it looks like the plastic tool didn't insert a keyframe at the beginning of the animation, so that's just something to keep in mind for later. Now let's just turn all of this off and select this layer so we don't see the bones, and hit the L key. Now we got the same problem as before. Same problem as before. Looks like a bloody tumor. So, this is where, Oscar, you might be right. I may have the patience of a saint because I'm not going to give up until I get this correct. So now, let's go back here to build skeleton mode. And I wonder if we can just move these a little bit so that we affect their range of influence a bit better without changing the animation itself. Yeah, except I would say we want to tweak this one a bit as well. This right down here bugs me. Oh shoot, that's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. So you can see you got to be really careful about what's being... Okay. What's being influenced by the bones. Oh, didn't realize I had an extra vertex right there. But it is cool that we can just make adjustments like this and then have the animation sort of update accordingly. So that looks good. That's actually what we were after. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is extend the influence of the plastic tool down to frame, I think it's 117. Yep. And I'm going to see if I can do it this way. I'm going to take this key, hit Control C, go forward 10 frames, Control V, and now I'm going to go up here and grab this key, hit Control C, and go to about 110 or so, hit Control V. So now what we should see is Akari breathing kind of sort of normally. So let's see if that worked. And by the way, got a little bit of a hiccup here. I really want to, I need to learn the hotkey for how do I set stop marker. There we go. Okay, so now we can loop just this region. Not bad. Not totally excited about it. I think there's one more thing we can adjust that will make it even better, and I don't think it's going to require dinking with the keyframes. I should be able to go back here, go into build skeleton mode, and I'm thinking I'm going to take this and take it right off the page and see what happens. Hit the L key. Okay, it's a little too extreme for my taste. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to go to build skeleton mode. I'm just going to move this. I'm just going to see what happens if I move this way down here. I think because it moves as much as it does, I'm pretty much stuck with motion that I'm not going to be happy with, but we'll see. Yeah, that's too extreme. I love the deformation. The deformation looks good. What's problematic is that first, so we're going to go into animate mode and grab the bones. Basically, there's your problem right there. Okay. And it might have a little more life to it right now by adding that. Those two keyframes that were copied now are slightly different from one another, so that may prove to be a good thing. So let's hit the L key and see what happens. I don't know quite how I feel about that. But, I mean, and this is what you do with CGI, right? When her side at rest looks like it could be thinner. Yeah, you know, that's a fair point. So you're saying down here where her waist would be, the whole thing is actually too high in the original drawing. And the covering is made on the y-axis. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you're right. So with that in mind, let's use the let's see if we can use the plastic tool to fake that. If we move this down like that. Okay, we can't do that because it's a chain, unfortunately. Maybe we can. All I'm trying to do right now is get the make it so it doesn't extend off the page. Interesting. I appreciate you pointing that stuff out. Okay. So as far as I can see, we are going to have to hit the X key, and we're going to have to modify this one more time. So the basic thing I've learned is never, never, never make these chains, because you'll wind up regretting it. So that did get rid of all the keys. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. I'm leaving all the color decisions I can modify later, so it's not a big deal. So let's go here, 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 and here. And this would be the stuff we want to have a little more control over. So I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try. Okay, so save all. So the idea here being, now we should be able to make a little modification of this. I know that's really distorting it a lot, but you know what? In a way, it's like, who cares as long as it looks good. Okay, so I feel like golly, man. You know what? I hate to say it, but we needed one more bone. Fortunately, we can do that. We need one more bone right there. This is very interesting. Okay. So now we're going to deal with... Actually, you know what? I'm going to add even one more bone. Right here. Okay? So now that allows me to go like this and like that, which lets me change the shape a little bit. And we're just really stepping outside of the original drawings. But, you know, that looks somewhat natural, so let's just give it a crack. If it doesn't work, we might go back to modifying the actual original drawings, but I don't think we're going to have to, so I just really want that to be subtle. I'm going to go ahead and set that as the end point. Okay. Okay, so I want to be able to jump from keyframe to keyframe. That goes next frame, last frame. How do I go to the next or last key? It'd be a good thing to be able to do. It's still too extreme. That's a little disappointing. Every time I think it's not very extreme, it turns out that it is. So does that look okay? I think it does. Yeah, that looks fine. So for some reason, I tend to super over animate. So I'm only going to give it a little and a little. Just a slight change. Let's go here. There. That's better. I think I can live with that. The default position. The little arrow, okay. The little arrow next to the key icon should do that for you. Let me check that out, man. The little arrow next to the key icon. Oh, I see. Right. So if I've got this selected. You would think that would light up if I was on an actual key. Ah, there we go. Yep. Good man. Thank you. I wonder if there's a hotkey associated with it. Not really, but I mean, that's not that big of a deal. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hit Ctrl C. Go to frame 109, Ctrl V. I'm going to go to Ctrl C, forward 10 frames, Ctrl V, and then I'm going to set the loop endpoint here. and grab this layer so I don't see the bones, and this should look like breathing. I like it. I like it muy mucho. Boy, that was painful to get to, wasn't it? So now we can always adjust the colors or even add some stuff to the drawing as long as we stay inside the lines. We can't really use other tools to modify this, like the A tool to scale it or move it or anything like that, because that will destroy the at least in my experience, the way I've done it, it destroys the effect of the bones tool. You got to redo the bones. Okay, so now one thing I want to look at here is, okay, I might have to stop this, stop it moving. So which color was the shadowing on the, okay, is this working or not? Okay, this is bad. It's not. Okay, now it's working. Darn it. Okay, seems there's a little bit of a delay going on. So I don't really have a way to know which. Yeah, that's better. Really subtle. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it looked like I said, it looked like a tumor. Looks stupid. I wish I had a way of determining what colors have actually been used. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go ahead and delete all the other colors in the palette. And that appears to have locked up opentoonz, so I think it's about to crash. Pretty sure it's about to crash. Which is unfortunate because I don't think I saved this after I did the bones tool. That's what happens. Invariably you get, when things start going well, you move too fast, and when you move too fast you don't save your work, and when you don't save your work, that's when the crash always happens. So it looks like I'm screwed. Yep, I'm screwed. So when I reload it, I'll find out how much I lost. But I think it's cool because I learned what I needed to learn today as far as using the skeleton tool and all the rest. I'm pretty sure this is going to be wrong, but let's go ahead and let's do this right now and see if it works. So I'm going to hit delete, and opentoonz has locked up again. So apparently you don't delete, you do not delete colors out of a palette. Stupider than a box of rocks, but okay. So the question is, what do you do? Yeah, I know, and I was using autosave myself. I think I have it disabled right now, but okay, so let's just find out what's going on here. Can we hit Ctrl X? Nope. Nope. Apparently you don't do any editing to opentoonz palettes because the program will crash. So the palettes are amazing until you start deleting things. Now if I deleted one at a time, and it could be if I went and got another cup of coffee or something, it could be that it would operate in the background and successfully do what I'm trying to get it to do. But okay, so let's abandon that effort to clean up the palette and just get back to seeing how much work we lost. And that's pretty easy by hitting the, oh, that looks like the correct skeleton, so, oh, I see. Yep, I lost the animation, so no big deal. It's the same old story. Once you do something a few times, you sort of know how to do it. And so I think what I'm going to have to do is, okay, it always turns keep distance on by default, which is so stupid because I've almost never used opentoonz where I wanted to keep the distance on the bones. You almost always want to change them. But now I got to redo what I did, so no big deal. Let's just go subtle, subtle, and set this to the stop marker. Hit the L key and see if it looks alright. Yeah, that looks good. That actually looks better than what I had before, matter of fact. Dude, Nassim, no. In fact, somebody just sent me to a link to the June build, the most recent one that Peppy Land posted, and I'm on a 12-core machine, Intel, i7, NVIDIA video card. When I run Blender 2.8, it runs, I see the splash screen, and then poof, the program just disappears. Will not run at all. So the program's not even slightly close to being stable. And at this point, I'm the cynic in the crowd. While everybody else is celebrating how wonderful Blender 2.8 is going to be, I'll tell you my opinion. Blender 2.5 was going to be great. Blender 2.5 was going to be the most amazing improvement of the interface, yada, yada, yada. And it is better. In many ways, it's much better than Blender 2.49. However, it wasn't the miraculous, more efficient workflow and all the rest that all the excited people said it was going to be. Not even close. And I mean, look at it. Come on, Blender 2.8 or 2.5 series has been active now for like 8 years or something. So yeah, so as far as Blender 2.8, unfortunately, I'm the cynic in the crowd. I'm the guy who says it's going to be really buggy and it's going to be quite a while before it's actually usable, or in the sense that we can trust it, you know. Okay, so that's not correct. And besides, I didn't really want to wait for Blender 2.8 to be mature to get going on this anime project. So that's why I'm using a mix. Frankly, I'm doing what most yeah, Oscar, you're right. It'll probably give it 6 months to a year and it'll probably be usable. But I want to say this again though. When I tested Blender 2.8, because it does run on my 8-core machine, and when I tested it, how do I put this? Because I don't want to. I really think that what Antonio and I forget what Peppy Land's real name is, but what those guys are doing is super cool, and they need to be complimented for, especially Antonio, for all the work he's doing on the code. Because I've done a lot of coding and it's hard. You know, it's a lot of work, more work than animation. But when I look at Hero, the open movie based on Blender 2.8 Grease Pencil, and when I look at using it, which I did do, all I can say is the fill tool is cool, and if you really, really want to embrace it as the tool that you're gonna, you're gonna work with, then over time it will become an amazing tool, and I may wind up doing that. But at this point, I'm saying it's all going to be great, but it's going to take at least a couple years to be great. Right now it's just novel. And by the way, that's why you don't see one single person on the entire planet doing any credible animation with Blender 2.8 Grease Pencil. Not at all. Peppy Land's the only guy that's doing anything with it. You can't find it if you look for it. And sad to say, for the most part, that's true of opentoonz too. I mean, go try to find actual quality anime type production being done with opentoonz. Everybody wants to talk about the fact that Studio Ghibli used it, you know, way back when. Well, yeah, they used it as a scanning tool for converting image files that were penciled, you know, paper drawn. But as far as end-to-end anime production, I don't know if if anybody's using it, I don't know it. Let's see here. I need the K key. Why is this acting like it's protected? I'm going to hit the K key. I'm going to grab that. Oh. Can't do that on a mesh deformed layer. Current tool cannot be used on a mesh deformed level. Okay, so that's bad news. Okay, what does that mean? That means Yeah, right. Right. And I don't, and Nassim, I don't mean to rant. Um, it's just, the problem is that people get really excited about new capabilities. Actually, I'll tell you a little story. And by the way, the problem that we have right now, I cannot, now that this level has been deformed with the plastic tool, I can't go in and start changing the paint. However, I'm pretty sure I can do it here. I can go into the image itself, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab that color, and that seems to be working. So fill tool. So what happens is, yep, I can go ahead and tweak this and just keep hitting the K key. When I hit the K key, it selects the correct color from the palette, which is really a cool capability. And now I can go in here and modify that, and when I go back to here, it will update accordingly. And I think, again, folks, I know for a fact that the colors here need to be modified. But as far as the breathing, it's definitely subtle. It's very subtle. Is it even moving? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really subtle. I might have made it too subtle. Okay, but, okay, stop. Okay, so now, Oscar, you've seen this before, but just for Nassim's enrichment, I'll show him what I'm working on. Okay, so this was done in Blender Grease Pencil in current 2.79 branch. And actually, this sequence right here is different from what I brought into opentoonz because I baked the breathing into the Grease Pencil and then did Ctrl-Shift-E to keyframe interpolate. Okay, so here's the whole scene. It only takes, what, 40 seconds or something, so I'm going to run this. This is about 1,000 frames. So Akari is breathing. She's sleeping. She's in a Tibetan monastery. So it cuts to a wide shot for a little context. And we go outside. We see the back of the monastery. We pan up and we find out these ninja dudes are apparently invading. But the second ninja guy is struggling a bit. A rock falls. It's going to go down on the ground, which kind of disturbs her. And then she sort of rolls over, and now she's happy again. He's worried because he screwed up. His buddy says, come on, let's get going. And we discover that Akari's very well aware that these guys are coming. So that's the beginning of the scene. So then I took this Blender Grease Pencil and just rendered it out as a 1,000 image sequence. And then when I brought it into opentoonz, what I actually did was I took that first sequence where she's supposed to be breathing, and I just took one frame of it, because you got 117 frames that are all repeated. So it's like, okay, that's stupid. Let's just take one frame, color that one frame, paint it, and then use the plastic tool to do the breathing effect. So I can see one more thing here that I want to fix. I guess we need, I think it'd be, I actually don't know which color, so I got to hit the K tool. Yep, there it is. And now I'm going to hit the fill tool and grab these guys and see if it, yeah, see, isn't that sweet? That's pretty cool. That's definitely pretty cool. opentoonz lets you, it's pretty strong about giving you ways to go in and fix things. If it didn't blow up so much, I swear it would probably be my go-to tool for this animate type work. I mean, there's other things obviously Blender's great for. CGI, it's amazing. You know, it's an incredible tool. Competes toe-to-toe with Maya, you know, or 3D Studio Max, yada yada. Back in the 90s, I spent $3,000 on 3D Studio Max. What a waste of money that was. Hate to say it, but it was a waste. Never got the utilization I would have hoped. Okay, so now, just because I can, I'm going to go in and just fix some stuff. I mean, isn't that cool? Even if I leave that little bit like that, it's fine. You know, as long as it's painted. But we don't really want to have these goofy little holes poking through, right? So I'm hitting the K key to select the correct color. So I'm sampling this to select the correct color out of the palette, and then using the fill tool in freehand mode to just wrap a lasso around this stuff and let opentoonz figure out what I intended to do, which it does correctly almost all the time. Okay, so now let's pull back out. I'm feeling pretty good about that. So let's go ahead and save our work, save all. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the last frame. I wish when there's probably a way to do this, but I was kind of wishing that when I hit last frame here that it would actually jump to the last frame in the X sheet. But probably what I need to do is add a hotkey for that, and I'll bet you if I hit that hotkey when my mouse is over the X sheet, it probably does jump to the last frame. So, but in any case, that's alright. So I'm going to go here and put the stop marker there so that we can just loop the whole bloody thing. And then we're going to basically do the same thing on the wide shot with the breathing. We're going to use the plastic tool to add the breathing here. But all in all, I'm actually happier than I thought I was going to be with the Blender, with the quality of the ink lines. Once I did the conversion in opentoonz, it looks like it applied a little bit of anti-aliasing, and you know, like I said, that looks pretty professional, I think. So let's see here. I've been live streaming for 2 hours, so I think with that I'm gonna go ahead and sign off here. Used loaner copy, yeah, back in the 90s. Lightwave. Well, Lightwave was always a little behind. I mean, it was the first with the mostest, even though it took like hours to render the simplest stuff. Its renderer was super slow. But as far as keeping up with 3D Studio Max, and then of course when Maya hit, by 1998 Lightwave was definitely behind. The thing it had going for it was that there were guys using it on some pretty key CGI TV shows like Babylon 5, and that was what I think kept Lightwave alive as long as it was. That's just opinion, of course. So anyway, the cool thing is we can go into the schematic view and color correct this whole thing. But I'll probably just use the same palette throughout. And I think with that, guys, I appreciate you hanging out. And yeah, exactly. Babylon 5, wasn't it great? So I'm gonna sign off and go do a few other things. And who knows? I may live stream later. And if I do, I'll tweet it. So follow Blended Planet on Twitter, and I'll just do like I've been doing and just put a tweet out there a few minutes before I live stream so that if people want to hang out, they can. So anyway, with that, I'm going to call it a day, and we'll check you later.